All
All right,
right.
welcome. Okay, go ahead. Yes, I'm here.
Yes. So, welcome everybody. For those of you who might not know me, my name is Anna Campaverdi, and I am the director of the Joseph A. Unano Latino Institute. Welcome to our very last virtual Café con Joes of the fall 2020 semester. We started this semester by discussing the ethical questions raised by COVID-19, and then in October, we dove into unpacking support resources that minority students need to succeed in higher education. And today, we'll be exploring representation in the media. And I would love to give a special shout out to our awesome co-sponsors. If you can flip over the PowerPoint. So thank you so much for collaborating with us. We will be dropping some audience engagement participation questions into the chat box, so feel free to utilize that. And then if you have any questions or answers to Angela's questions, just use the raise hand option on your screen. So when we think about stories brought to life by film, television, digital media, and theater, how many times do we see ourselves reflected in those stories? And how diverse are the actors, writers, directors, the producers, and the executives working on these stories? And as an audience, what can we do about it? So to shed light on these issues, I am so happy to welcome Professor Angela Kotsonis of the College of Communications and the Arts. So Angela is an incredible advocate for diversity and integrates inclusivity and active learning into her work. She recently facilitated Walking the Beat, a creative writing, theater, and multimedia workshop for students and local police officers designed, excuse me, to establish real conversations and goals. And this Monday, November 16th, she'll be presenting How to Raise Anti-Racist Kids with the goal of helping white parents learn alongside their children, modeling the bravery required to bend the arc of justice, because children watch everything that we do, and anti-racism is something we must all do together. So welcome, Angela. So I would love for you to start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself and why this discussion is important.
First, I would like to honor you, Anna, for everything that you do, your tireless efforts in being an advocate to the work and to the students. Everything happens by people. Institutions are moved or are immovable because of the people in them. So I come from a place where we honor the people who are doing the work. So I think it is very important to always honor the people who bring us into a space. So I am here as your guest. So thank you so much. I honor you for everything that you do and your tireless presence in this space. I also want to honor Diamond Vasquez for all the work and the effort that they brought to this, the meetings that we had before this moment. This is really programming that you designed. And I come from a place, and I say all that to say, who am I and how did I come to this work? I am a person who honors the company that brings me into a room. None of this, we do not do this work alone. I am not an individual. I am a collaborator. I come to this work through the lens of an artist. So I believe in art making as an act of liberation. I believe in the artist as a statesperson. I believe in the artist as a dream builder, as the ones that will help move us into more just moments. If there are any issues or any blocks or any problems, I mean, those problems, what we have, the one problem that we have is an imagination problem. So I come to this work as someone who believes in imagination. So I stand firm in my ability to have a fantasy moment of using my creativity as a problem-solving tool. I also come to this moment as a storyteller. I'd like to locate myself as a storyteller in this moment. And storytelling is an indigenous practice. All right, so let's name that and honor that for a moment. There is great power in storytelling. who gets to tell the stories, the way that we tell these stories, the language that we use, the medium that we use to embed these stories. I believe in the power of narrative. I believe in creating space for all of us to deepen our commitment, not only to our stories, but in telling our stories as a practice. I think it's a cross-sectoral practice. So you know how we come at it like, what's your major? What am I going to study? What is the work? Like, I get it. We're all here because we want to work and we want to do the good work, and we're all here to work. Like, I get it. There is a commitment that no matter what the work is that you want to do, there is a place for story and storytelling in it. So that's where I come from, and that's how I come here to this space as a humble guest and also as someone who loves students. I have to name that, and I have to say that. So I honor and I recognize everything that they're managing in this moment.
That's so important. And thank you so much for sharing that. And like you said, storytelling is just, it's so powerful, and everyone has their own stories. And, when you and I were talking, we decided to change the name of this event, to who gets to tell your story, and why does representation matter in the media? Because, when we were chatting and we were kind of preparing for the event, we talked about who was in the writer's room, who are the producers, who are the actors, but we were also talking about some stereotypes. So would love, if okay with you, to kind of kick off the conversation, kind of talking about stereotypes, and maybe talking a little bit about what we see in television and films, and why do we see these kinds of cultural stereotypes being pushed by the films and the TV series that we love so much.
Okay, sure. And I'll also say, you are free to keep the PowerPoint up, but I don't need to see me. I don't need to. We got it. So I get it. I'm welcome. You got got the coffee.
Can you switch over to the next slide, please?
Yeah. So thank you. And thank you for that honor. So we're here. We're having cafe. We're having cafe and we're sharing space with each other. Stereotypes, a stereotype is an oversimplified version of someone else, someone else's identity. And it's really a stereotype is a fetish. A stereotype is essentializing someone. It's exoticizing the other. It is so limiting and it is so dangerous because it does not give any room. Stereotypes don't give any room. They're incredibly narrow because the people who hold them take it to be true, and they will not allow those people to be anything other than what they perceive them to be. How incredible. So if we're talking about stories, a stereotype is one tiny story that gets repeated over and over again. And like all the media majors here will tell you, when you repeat a message, you will come to believe it to be true. Not even checking the source for it. You're hearing it so often, and the repetitiveness of it reinforces it, and that the repetition is what makes you believe it to be true, regardless of whatever the outlet is. And a stereotype is a stereotype because it has been repeated and magnified so many times. It only allows itself to be only what it is. So a stereotype. So when you talked about it, I just have to go back about the media and about stories. Like here, stereotypes of Latinx people, in film and movies. Who is writing these stories? So these are characters. And you can make a character with no character, and you can make a character with deep character. There is a difference between characterization and deep character. You arrive at characterization, the performativity, the outside, anything that you're able to see or anything that you're able to hear. Think of characterization as, putting something on. You arrive at deep character in a story by trying to imagine how a person would act or react in any given situation. That's when you have somebody's hopes and somebody's fears and somebody's impulses and somebody's motivation is deep character. The problem is with stereotypes, stay at characterization. They do not bother themselves with deep character. So what that means is people who are writing and who are making these stories are not really committed to the multidimensionality of any people. So they are giving themselves permission to keep repeating characterization or stereotypes. The people that are writing these stories hold a tremendous amount of power. Who is the writer? Who is writing this story? So, and I've said this before, when you have in a room, in a writer's room, whatever shows that you love to see, right? Like all your favorite like Netflix shows and all, it is very rarely just like one writer, right? You have teams of writers that are responsible to creating any kind of storyline. So it is very important not only just to have diverse voices in the writing room, but to make sure that the diverse, these words always are like, we'll get to it. When you have diverse voices in any writing room, that they actually have power. So you could have, right, they have power. So you have the people that are writing these stories to be diverse and to be people that have authentically can arrive at deep character, not just at characterization. All right, that can, and also have power. So it's not just the writing room that is diverse, that has to be diverse, but also your editors, your showrunners, your assistant directors, your lighting designers. Do lighting designers know, do they train how to light people of color? That is a very, so when you think about it, right, the imagery, the camera work, when you are a person in school and you're training how to do your craft as a lighting designer, our white trainees in lighting design programs, are they trained how to light people of color? Right, so we have like these big, and then ultimately you have the director, who is literally exactly what it sounds, right? So what I'm saying is, not only do we have diverse writing rooms, but we have to give diversity throughout, people that are representative of the story that you're telling, that know how to tell it. And it will be that much more beautiful. It has been known that homogeneous groups will not be as creative as diverse ones. Diverse groups will be much more successful. They will be much more creative, but it will take them longer to be successful because you have to do the work to establish and build trust.
Mm-hmm.
So you have all these works, that you have stereotypes, right, in it, because you have very homogeneous writing rooms that are churning out these stories, that they're only telling the story that they know how to tell.
Right.
So right, so as white people, and we said this in the meeting, that over 85% of white people live in suburbs that have a 1% population of people of color. So if white folk are in these rooms creating these rooms, they're in these writing rooms, they're in these in this creative control, they're going to keep reiterating these stereotypes because that's literally the only storyline that they're having access to.
We're looking at the chat and
Oh
definitely.
yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't. Go ahead.
No, please. It's perfectly okay. That's what we're here for. So students in the chat are saying that minorities are usually represented as maids or supports, to main characters. In regards to your comment about, it's not just the actors and the writers, one of the attendees noted that in Mulan, the costume designer, who was a white woman, was sent to China for 2 weeks to absorb the culture rather than have someone of Asian or Chinese descent take control of the costume design for the movie. So I think we see this happening like over and over again, and we definitely will go into, having those writers' rooms and those executives being more diverse. But before we do that, I do have a question for you. So you mentioned that a lot of individuals live, in non-minority suburbs. So how do stereotypes then become dangerous to someone who is only seeing minorities portrayed through the media that they consume and how they treat them in real life?
So how does it become, can you ask me one more time?
Yeah, of course. So
Go
is
ahead.
it essentially like if I just see Latinos on TV, does that become dangerous to my behavior into when I actually meet a Latino person in real life?
Oh my God, of course, because then you're being reactive and not responsive. You're being reactive. There's a difference between reacting and responding.
Mhm.
So when we think about stereotypes, there's always such a negative connotation to that, right? So when you, and I always say this when it comes to, especially for teaching, right? Because I'm first and foremost a teacher. So you have 83% of teachers are white women. So if they are teaching a diverse cohort of students, is that the first time that they've been around people of color? Oh my God. When they're teaching them, like, how do you feel psychologically safe in that? So if somebody is encountering a Latino for the first time, they're going to react to that person not as deep character, as an individual with their own hopes, fears, dreams, and motivations, but as characterization, right? As an oversimplified characterization, and they will just react to their perception. And that's what bias is. That's what implicit bias is. So if you believe the stereotype to be true, which you will, because it's been repeated so many times, and it's literally the only access that you have to this other group of people, you're going to be reactive to that person and you will cause harm. You will cause harm to the person with which you are interacting. And and also for that person who's being reactive, like how, that's your own limited experience too. Like, what a shame. Like I just said, like the more diverse a group is, the more successful that group will be. The better the work will be that they create. So now I am limited. My success is limited, my knowledge is limited, my experience is limited, my language is limited, my collaborators I'm limited in who I'm able to collaborate. My proficiency is limited. The spaces that I'm able to access is limited. The books that I read, limited. And I
Right,
won't know, but I won't even know it.
right.
That is what is dangerous. It is so incredibly dangerous for so much to be missing. And the people in power, the mainstream, you don't even know it. I need a minute. I need a minute. Like you don't even know it.
Right.
Like you don't even know there are all these stories that are missing from your life. And I'll stop there.
No, I think but I think it's important to acknowledge because maybe we don't know if we only watch one thing consistently over and over. Like you said, these things, they're the basis of bias and they're the basis of what you will cover and what you choose to put to the forefront versus what you won't. To kind of go back to your point about, the diversity needed not just in actors, but just in the people behind the scenes. Something similar came up in our previous event where we had a couple of comic book creators as panelists. And one of them who worked previously for Marvel had been saying that the writers sometimes were very eager to diversify some of the storylines and some of the characters, but it was exactly what you said. Their editors and their executives put the halt on it because they didn't believe A, it would sell, or B, it was necessary to the main story of that character. So back when they used to work, I think it was in the 70s, 80s, or early 90s, they met a lot of resistance from those in power. And when you and I were talking, you said something that I continue to think about almost all the time since you said it, was to those who have the power, you give minorities small victories without ever handing them the war. So, we talked about who the standouts would be. So we get something like the Black Panther movie, or we get something like a Broadway standout like Lin-Manuel Miranda. But those little wins don't necessarily equal the total change that we need.
I'm just taking a note here. Yes. Can I respond to that?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Of course.
So, and this is true about politics too, right? Listen, everything is political. That's that is the first. Politics the political is about power. So the comment, right? Concessions. The state, and the state is literally the government, but also the state, like Paramount, right? Netflix, like the state is anything that is the pinnacle of the power. The state will give its concessions, only the concessions that it will permit itself to give. When you get the concession, be really clear and brace yourself for the impact of the backlash. Because the state very much does not like concessions. They're always forced, right? Like the Twitter the hashtag, the memo with the 100,000 signatures, the change.org petition. Like every shift that has happened was forced. The state did not arrive to it. Like, you know what? We're going to diversify our writing room. It came after many, many trials and tribulations to force the state to concede. And the thing about a concession is it allows the people to have a little bit of what they want, but the state never surrenders its power. So, and I tell this to students all the time, and I will say it here. You could do everything. You could advocate for social change. You can fight for change and do nothing to challenge power. So we could have like this show with these characters, we could have the movie that's written by these folk and directed by these folk. That's great. They let that happen. The gateless gate let that happen. But what did we do to really challenge power? Who is still in the decision-making seat? What does that hierarchy look like? Who approves of ideas? Who are the people that still allow this to happen or not allow it to happen? So I'm going to go back and I'll give you that with whoever said about, was it Mulan, the costume that they sent the person to explore. That is holding on to power. So we're gonna we're gonna concede. Maybe they have like assistant, maybe they engage like the people there, and in that province, and they paid some money to let them be there, or they engage, right? But they still held on to the power of who is going to be credited ultimately with designing these costumes. If the person really wanted to be willing, they would have surrendered their seat, and they would have said, you know what? I'm not going to accept this gig because I'm really not the best person for it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to nominate a costume designer who'd be great at it. And here's a list of names of people that I think you should, and be honored, and and be able to like ruffle their feathers at getting the credit for like nominating the awesome person who's great for this role. Anyway, so that's all I'm going to say about that. But if you notice that didn't happen, because I didn't finish, because maybe like whoever is in power really wanted to work with this costume designer, because they know that they're able to control them, because they know that they will be compliant. It's also that too, right? You're going to allow who controls the work, because who you want to work with and how comfortable it will be for you. So, and all right, I'm going to stop there.
No, please.
I'm getting a headache.
I think no, stop, Angela, please. I was it really went through my head to just be like, hi, everybody. Please welcome Angela. Here's
I'm sorry. Go ahead. We're with it.
no, no, no.
I see the little squares. I see you though. So we're good.
So, no, but you brought on some, or you brought to mind. So the reason I kept resonating with that over and over again, because the underlying thing that you said was we take those victories and we don't challenge that power. How amazing would it be if, you said, you know what, this is not in my wheelhouse. Let me give you names of people who would be able to do this and have them do it. And that doesn't happen. But I think more than that, you can apply that same concept to everything. You can apply the exact same concept to students who I know a couple of years ago, there was a group of students who, sat outside President's Hall here at Seton Hall University to request that a director be put in for the Africana Studies department. So you can really take that concept and put it to so many facets, of your life. You could really put it into almost every facet of your life is the underlying message of you don't challenge the power. You can have A, but I'm going to keep the rest of the alphabet. And I think that's so important because I think that can help someone who perhaps doesn't understand that or who perhaps doesn't see that really try and think a little bit more critically about the decisions they make and the things that they decide to support and what they choose to do. And when you mentioned, the costume designer saying, you know what, maybe I'm not the person to do this, let's have someone else do this. It really brought into mind that we kind of chatted about too, cultural appropriation and the Hollywood actors, and some of these creators that take on, representing cultures and minority cultures that don't necessarily, resonate with them. And Spencer, if you can move it over, I think 2 slides is where we would be. Yes. So we kind of talked about, would love to talk a little bit about cultural appropriation and just like what that looks like in films, in television, in the theater.
Sure. And I'm also gonna name here a lot of, and y'all have heard it, like the scholars that are pretending to be, or the writers. That is the writers that are pretending to be of cultures that they're actually not from at all. Like that is an illness. So when we talk about like white supremacy, like that is absolutely, there is an illness that is there that gives permission to people, like the audacity to give yourself permission to be something that you are absolutely not, that is causing so much harm to the people that are that. But you are completely going to center, as whiteness does, you will completely center yourself as the only one. So the thing about cultural appropriation here, it is white folk who are giving themselves permission to put this on without ever having to endure the reality of what life is like as it. It is the ultimate that. And when I enter this work in this way, for me, when I see white folk who are changing their names so their poem could be accepted into the Poetry Foundation Journal, or the white author who is writing the story, sprinkling the few Spanish words in the dialect in the book, so they could pass it off as the book of a working migrant. You know what I mean? I look at it as white folk who have no access to metaphor. No access to metaphor, no access to an aesthetic, having difficulty tracing their own timeline, not knowing where they come from. There is a cost to whiteness. There is a cost in it as a transaction. For me to get all of this white privilege, I have to give up something, right? And the cost of whiteness, the cost of all that privilege, when we say assimilation, it is completely disembarking from any kind of historical or cultural nuance, from anything that might make us other. And that is like, because when we think about white folk, I mean, there are ethnic white folk. There is no, whiteness is a newly, we know this, right? It's all sociology. It was constructed, it was created. Whiteness, white means the absence of. So when people go in, when you have white folk, it is also part of the legacy of imperialism and also the legacy of pillage. You know, the idea of like going in somewhere and I'm gonna take, you know, I'm gonna take what I want, I'm gonna take what serves me. It's like it is the extension of the historical legacy of colonization, and cultural appropriation is doing that. I'm not, there is a difference between appropriating and appreciating, right? Appreciating and being able to navigate in those other aspects and aesthetics. Absolutely, I'm not saying that there is a way to do that, but there's also things that are like completely obvious. Here we don't have to have these actors play these roles, and the fact that power allowed these things to happen lets me know that power is left unchecked. Like, really? Man, what was the actress, Scarlett Johansson? You know, you're right, or any book, like the publisher of the white author who was writing the book in the Latino voice, like, really? You went through first draft, second draft, the pitch, the call for proposal, the book cover, the scheduling the party, the tour. You know what I mean? Like, you can't do a multi-million dollar, you can't do, you know what I mean? You can't do anything that requires money without 1,000 signatures and people
Right.
looking at it with a map. Like on campus, you know, you can't get cookies for the event without somebody saying, wait a minute, you know, how, like all like this about it. Well, so that lets me know that power is isolated in itself, is left unchecked, and wants to reap the reward of these metaphors, of these stories, but they still want to only allow a certain kind of people to do it and to tell that story. And they think it's perfectly okay because either no one is around to tell them, hey, maybe we shouldn't have Joseph Fiennes, you know, be in this role. Either that's because they don't diversify their circle, or the people who are there aren't given sufficient power to really be able to challenge. So again, diversity without power is just checking the box. And the diverse forces, the diverse folk doing this work in those spaces, you can't do it alone. There is such a thing as solidarity that is necessary. And protect your heart, protect your art, protect your well-being, protect your spirit, protect your energy, because you will literally feel like this drives me crazy. Like who thought this was a good idea?
Right. Especially because of what
Anyway.
you just said. Literally thousands of people, hundreds of people
Right. No
had to
one, no
approve.
one was like, excuse me,
Yeah.
maybe, either those folk who could do it are scared, they're
Yeah.
fearful because they are vulnerable, because they are not given sufficient safeguards, because they're not given sufficient support, you know, or there are really the people in power are completely isolated. The further up you go, you don't, like, who are they accountable, like, who are you accountable to?
Right.
And I'll leave
And
it at that.
it's funny that you mentioned Scarlett Johansson in Ghost in the Shell, where she portrayed a Japanese anime character. And I remember that, if I remember correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, they asked her about it, and she said that as an actor, she should be able to play anyone. Because her job is not the cultural piece, her job is to bring to life what the director and the writers want. And in doing some research about cultural appropriation, there were multiple times where actors and actresses, it was only after they were called out that they issued an apology via social media. But again, like, even when we talk about actors, they had to get the call and they have to read the script and they have managers and people that work with them before, they take on anything. So it was interesting to hear, someone who did dabble in cultural appropriation defend it because they were an actor and it wasn't their job to.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna get ahead my head. You know what? What a way power deflects. What isn't that brilliant? Isn't that wonder like it is astonishing sometimes to see that. What permission she just gave herself. Isn't that amazing? Privilege doesn't have to bother itself with anything. And then you have, students of color, cultured students, students who feel like they are advocating or they have to speak up for. You know what I mean? When do they get to just like not think about it? You know what I mean? When do those students, they don't have to make protest art, or they don't have to be a voice for their community, or they don't have to stand up for anybody, or they don't have, you know what I mean? When do they get to just like make a painting that's about nothing? You know what I mean? When do they get to be Rothko? You know what I mean? When do they get to be Jackson Pollock, that I could just throw something on the wall and it really doesn't matter what anybody interprets it as? Because you know what I mean? Like there is a privilege in being able to just sort of express yourself without speaking for or up or against or on behalf of. You know what I mean? So, and the other thing about Scarlett Johansson, it's not her responsibility. There is a deep respect that we can give people who know how to apologize right. There is no weakness to say, yo, you know what? Let me tell you, I made a mistake and I am sorry for that. You know what? And not the apology, non-apology, to just like apologize and say, you know what? I wanted the acclaim that this movie will bring me. I think that, I wanted it to be part of my catalog. So that's what motivated my self-interests. And not only would I get paid a fee, but I'm getting a percentage off the back end. And you know what? That was really hard to say no to. Do you know what? Like be honest here. Scarlett Johansson could have done a very powerful thing by saying, yo, you know what? Nah, not me. Because honestly, like she didn't need it. That was a pillage. And I just want to say one thing about the way things are cast. We're about like, no, Latino stories, or you know what I mean? We're not going to do more of or these stories, they're not going to sell. The idea of selling, the idea of I'm going to colonize this cast in this way, or no, we're not going to do, we need a famous writer. You know what I mean? We can't give somebody new a chance, or we can't give this new structure a chance, because of profit. There time and time again, these new ideas, these real stories told by the people who are connected to them, diversifying your cast, getting some new energy. Those have been profitable time and time again. So I don't understand this sort of the reinforcing of this idea that only one kind of story or one kind of storyteller is the only thing that's going to be successful, that I'm protecting my investment by putting these characters in it. That is such a lie, because listen, the Latino audience, there are so many divergent audiences that deserve, that are consumers too. You know what I mean? So you're just making art for one kind of person because you believe there's only one kind of person in the world. But that is not true. Being whatever mainstream is, whatever whitewashing is, whatever this homogenous kind of creativity is, that is not the only, that is not profitable. It won't continue to be profitable. That moment has expired. And all the gatekeepers now have to evolve. It's, I always say, you got to evolve or die, because you do have audiences out there that won't wait, for the gatekeepers to tell their story. Those are going to be the people that are going to create their own mediums, their own publishing companies, their own platforms. They're going to create their own industries to get rid of the middleman and connect to their audiences directly. So you're missing a profitable opportunity. If you're at the bottom line, you're missing an opportunity by not engaging these visionaries. And they're going to go off and collaborate in solidarity and do the work and receive the profits, the benefit of those profits for themselves.
Well, you mentioned earlier that, diversity, you need to evolve and you need to have diversity because it inspires you to be a lot more innovative, a lot more quickly than when you're homogenous, as you mentioned. Someone in the comments Caitlin in the comments dropped a comment that a huge issue that she thinks about is cultural appropriation of hairstyles. So like, for example, white people wearing box braids. And anytime like that comment actually made me think about digital social media and how particularly the Kardashians have been cited over and over again as changing their hair to traditionally, like African American Black women hair. And, they continue to just do it even in the face of all the comments and all the backlash they received.
So, and this, white people won't say anything that 1,000 haven't said before them. But the thing about white people is white people don't listen to Black people. White people do not listen to people of color. So the problems that we're having right now is because, and I bring this up on Monday when I do the workshop, How to Raise Anti-Racist Kids, and why it's so important to have a diverse teachers in your, you're in school for 12 years or whatever, just the preliminary, the schooling. Why it's so important to have different teachers is because white students have to learn how to follow leadership from other folk that do not look like them. So and the thing about the hairstyles, and all of these details, when, they codify it, they package it, they sell it back. When white folk do it, it makes it accessible. It gives everybody, especially with the Kardashian, on my headache. I got they have such a reach. They give permission to other people to do it, and I always say this, people love, they hate the trendsetters, but they love the trends. They hate the trendsetters, but they love the trends. And that is just the most harmful part of cultural appropriation in that way, because you're not even giving room and honoring the stories and the people who helped originate this thing that's allowing you to enjoy a kind of aesthetic. So, the Kardashians, who am I to, who am I to say? You know what I mean? They're gonna, you're hating Professor K. I'm like, all right, you know what I mean? Okay. They are really, really good at like manipulating a media system. Somebody gave them a platform and they used it. They are a professional celebrity. They're not a professional. I'm like, my daughter was like, what are they famous for? And I'm like, Eva, I don't know what they're famous for. They are professional celebrities. And that is the danger of these folk who have power, who are appropriating, and then it gives everybody else permission. The people who are idolizing them, it gives everybody else permission to appropriate too, without honoring any of the legacy, without honoring any of the people and the harm that it caused. Like New York State had to pass a law to make it illegal to not hire or hire somebody because of because of their hairstyle, specifically because of dreadlocks. And that was like in the last few years in New York State. And I'll leave it at that.
Well, you actually made me remember something. So right after this call at 6 o'clock, the Hair Student Organization is actually going to be hosting a student panel discussion discussing different cultural views about hair. So if anyone on this call is interested,
Yes.
we're going to drop the call-in details into the chat box. Great. So that we can perhaps even just tie this conversation over to their conversation. But taking a few steps back to when you mentioned about diversifying educators, someone in the comments actually mentioned that they were asked, how old were they when you had your first teacher that was a person of color? And it said, this really resonated with me because I have only had one non-white teacher, my high school freshman bio teacher. And this was important because, like you mentioned even earlier, the educators tend to be, Caucasian, and they tend to be white. And what happens when you're taught, without different perspective or without different narratives, or like you said, like if you're a teacher, are you facing people of color or different cultures the first time when you step into the classroom and no time before that?
Mm-hmm. And that is one of the questions actually for on Monday is, say, when was the first time that you had a teacher? Like people can go for their entire career without having a person of color as one of their teachers. And what a loss.
I did my bachelor's and my master's degree at Seton Hall, and the only professor of color that I had was my Africana Studies professor, Introduction to Africana Studies. And when I thought of that, I was like, oh my God, like I didn't even recognize that until after I graduated college. But, to kind of like pivot off of that, we're listening to these things happening, right? And we're seeing how the media is representing. So what can we do as an audience? Like how can we challenge the power, and how can we ensure to even give platforms to the creators that are leading these charges?
Okay. Watch where you spend your money, right? Your money, a strike a strike only works in conjunction with a boycott. Also build your collaborations, take back some of your power. And so I don't empower students, I repower them. We have, right, to be real clear on that language, that you do have power. Know and recognize it, ascribe it to yourself, and start working with each other in solidarity, collaboratively, to create your own gates, to create your own systems. So you're not applying and you're not waiting and you're not sending the application and you're not hoping and you're not asking that your work, it is not contingent on somebody else opening the door for you. And I'm saying that as students here, the people that are on this call, this is going to be your crew that you're going to be building with. I mean, the people that I went to college, I've been working with the same people for 20 years, right? So you have to build your coalitions and your network so y'all can support each other, create work with and for each other on any kind of project. So y'all are not only opening the door, but you're holding the door open to each other. And we're in an institution, so we aim that. When I think about university, when I think about college, I think that these are like training programs, right? There are learning programs. So what we can do is ask ourselves, like, who's in the room learning with me? So this is about media and representation. Like, what is the recruitment that institutions, that power structures do to make sure that the classrooms are diversified? Students and faculty and other collaborators and bringing people in. And always, always what you can do is ask, whose voice is missing from this room? Who is missing from this room? Whose voice are we not hearing from in this conversation? And name it, and holding each other accountable to be corrective. So whenever I think about curriculum, like I'm a curriculum person, right? My job, part of what I do is teach teachers how to teach. That's part of it. So a lot of the work that's happening right now that I do is to help fix a negligent curriculum. Because what we're learning, it's not just how we're learning it, and what we're learning is negligence. So what we can do is say, hey, this is an incomplete, what I'm learning. Yeah, I'm in the lighting design program, right? We're not learning how to of color correctly. I'm a hairstylist in the costume department. You know what I mean? In the theater program. You have to learn how to fix all different kinds of hair, right? So if you could also be accountable to your own learning and ask the positions of power, hey, I'm not learning everything that I need to learn. And in order for my learning not to be negligent, this is what's missing from the curriculum, and I'm going to need it. And everyone, I'll just repeat it again. Who's missing from this room? And whose voice aren't we hearing? Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Angela. I think that's exceptionally important because we do have the majority of the people that attend this Café con Joe's are students. And in our last Café con Joe's, we talked about, having support systems in place that encourage minority students, their success in obtaining higher education. So as an institution, like you and I are you're a professor, I'm an administrator. So, what do you think for the other administrators and professors that are on this phone call? How can we even empower our students to challenge, the university and to challenge their future workplaces?
Sure. And I'll say this with love and joy. There is great joy that can happen from holding ourselves and each other accountable. So we're talking about, the Mulan costume designer and, the writers in this show and the actors. One thing that can really happen, and I'm going to have to put this on the spot, I'm going to have to blast this out, and we talked a little bit about this, your training programs, your internships, you know what I mean? You have to create opportunities to really work with your students of color to help make sure that they are able to access the opportunities that are there. And I don't know where I got to go. I will do, what do I got to do? Where do I got to show up? What kind of Bank of America event do I have to go to raise the money for institutions to pay for students to access unpaid internships? That is and I know, Anna, you do this work. I want to amplify the work that you're doing, your positionality in doing and in support of that. But that is like a real way. Listen, people get work from internships. They build their resumes, they build their connections. Jobs are get through relationships, through networking. You have to be in the room. So make it accessible for your students, support them in their way to be in the room. And a part of doing that is raise the money, create the fund so students are able to be paid so they can access these unpaid internships, because writers, artists, they're able to afford to struggle. There is a moment where they are able to afford to struggle. They're able to afford not to make money. They're able to do this work and also they have like multiple streams of income that are able to support themselves. Being a writer, and these like the when we think about like these things that you got to hustle, you don't make a lot of money at first, like who could afford to do that? So one of the things that institutions can do is make it accessible, feasible, reasonable for all students to be able to access these unpaid opportunities that take time and effort, and time and effort again and again, so that they're able to access them. And that's practical. I hope that I had to say that. That's like a super practical thing that we could actually do that would mean a lot.
I think that's very practical, and I think that is, very feasible to help students. Where, like you said, we're a training ground, and I tell our students, at least the students that work at the institute that are there regularly, is, when you work at the institute, like this is your training ground. You're using this to build your skills. You're using this to build your network, and you're using this so that when you go on, to start conquering your career, you have all these lessons behind you that empower you to do more, empower you to use your voice, and empower you to, be that person that says, should we be doing this? So I think, like what you just said, for all the other faculty and administrators that are on the phone call, and with Seton Hall University's priority of collaboration and supporting students, like it's something very feasible that we've talked about, multiple times, and will hopefully be doing in the near future. Because you're right, like who can afford to do that? So you're automatically reducing the number of students and the number of individuals that are eventually going to go into these positions if they can't do it, um, to kind of go into supporting, some of the artists that are minority, I think that I don't know, Angela, if you agree. I think following, content creators that are minorities, you know, screening independent films, going to these local small theaters, some of which are on this call that we invited, and from the South Orange and Orange area, going to these kinds of more localized content creators and just artists and storytellers is a good way to help build their platform.
And diversify, like social media, like diversify the voices that you allow your cipher to access. Like, who do you follow?
Right.
Diversify who you follow. You'll have that much more access to different stories, experiences, ideas, opportunities.
Absolutely. And I think, we kind of started this conversation by we all have our own stories and we're all storytellers, and there is a real need to diversify the people in front and behind the camera for all the television, all the film, all the theater that we enjoy and love and consume. We didn't even really touch on, digital media, which is a whole other, that could
And
be a whole other,
and
a
digital
whole
and
other,
digital and digital blackface.
yes,
Absolutely.
a whole other conversation that we can take on next semester. But I think that, I think you really challenged the team or the group or the students to really, think about challenging that power and what that means, and think about supporting those, like we support small businesses. We had that kind of came to the forefront during COVID-19, was support local. Like, where you spend your dollar matters. So support local artists, support content creators that are minorities, support content creators that, tell different stories than what you're used to, in order to get a more comprehensive picture of what the world is actually like, and to really empower you to use your voice to drive these changes. Because like Angela said, it's not enough for one Latina, to be in a conference room speaking for the entire Latino population. You need allies, and you need other people who understand and are on your side. So I think those are extremely important lessons that you've shared with us. And I hope we all think about everything that we've heard tonight, and we go through our social media, and we start following individuals who are different. And, if there is, would you like to share a little bit about the presentation that you'll be doing on Monday?
Yes, I'll do that, and then if you'll let me say like a last word,
Yeah,
so I could close
please
close
say
it
all
out
the words you
close it
want.
out with the people. Yeah, on Monday, how to raise anti-racist kids. It's for white parents raising white children. And it's literally what exactly what it sounds like. And the last line is teach your children early what you learned late. It's for anyone that is going, everyone is invited. I invite, even if you think the topic does not pertain to you, I invite you to join us just so you can see how we have a very difficult conversation with a certain amount of ease, and how we lean into uncomfortability, and how we have these discussions, just to witness, just to be a part of it. And I always, need a crowd. So please, please come through. It's for anyone that is going to be around kids, is going to be a parent, is a parent, but also, again, even if you don't identify with the target audience, just come in and see what a facilitated discussion like this can sound like. Monday at 7 o'clock. I just want to say, you as an artist, listen, everybody can be artistic. Everybody is artistic, even if they don't identify as an artist. Creating art and being creative is just a lens through which you look at the world. Your art, which is the work that you do, is valuable. Always get paid for it. That is, and I just need to be in here for a minute. Always get paid for your work. Don't ask people of color to do work and talk. Don't ask people of color to mentor you for free. Don't ask if you could pick someone's brain. That is a violent gesture. If you're going to ask for someone's advice on, am I appropriating here? Or if you're going to ask for expertise from people of color, buy their time, pay them for their time. It is valuable. If you are a creative person, be very diligent on how you allow people to access you, your ideas, set your boundaries as a form of self-care. So saying no is a form of self-care. Art making, creativity is not something that should be done for free. Creative work that we're talking about right now drives the economy. It creates entire neighborhoods, industries, branding, products, absolutely drives the economy. So know that, honor that. Art is essential. I honor everyone here. Look out for each other. Find each other. This is your circle and this is your crew. Thank you so much, Anna, for having me. I honor the Institute, and I'm glad to have been a humble guest. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Angela, for everything. So we dropped 3 things into the comments. Well, Gregory dropped one of those things. One is the hair event that is happening right now on Teams. The second is the link to how to raise anti-racist kids. And then the third, thank you so much, Gregory, follow at Progressive Theater on Instagram. And if you want to include any more information, just send it over my way, Greg, because we always send a follow-up email to our participants with links that we discussed during the presentation. So everyone, that is where the links are. And thank you so much, Angela, for sharing everything that you know with us. And I look forward to a successful spring 2021. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was amazing, Angela.
Do we stop recording?
I
am stressing. Do we stop?
I don't understand. I felt your headache.
Are we still recording, Anna? Are we? Gregory, thank you so much.
I feel it. Like, I felt it. This is like the work that I'm doing. Like, yeah. I think a lot of people need to hear your, they needed to hear this. I kind of wish I knew it was open to everyone, because I would have just posted this on Actors Equity and Theater Folks of Color, because everybody's asking for these opportunities and they're asking for a seat at the table, but they're not necessarily challenging. So I think, yeah.
We got to do it again.
Yeah, we definitely.
Listen, progressive theater. Listen, we. How do I get into how can we be friends? How can we build? How can I?
Like, I'll give you my email.
Let's go. And I'll send you an email right now so you have my email and we could just like, I'm like progressive. I kept looking in the chat. I'm like progressive theater. I need to like.
We just filmed an entire movie.
Oh,
like The Gospel at Colonists was on Broadway 1985 starring Morgan Freeman. And we just filmed an entire movie in 1 week. And I employed over 50 Black and Latino actors, musicians.
Wow.
So it's like, that's the work that we're trying to do. And what you said something about, giving concession, power giving concession. And it's funny, I had a meeting with the lawyer of Bob Telson after they gave me the rights and everything, literally 2 days ago. They said they weren't allowed to give you the rights to that show. And I asked why. And they go, well, we don't know if you've produced a Broadway show or what you've produced before. And it then becomes exclusive if it becomes a big deal. She told on herself. And I'm like, we gotta make it exclusive. That's really what it is. I want to own the show now because they really boiled me. They stopped my production for 2 weeks.
Wow.
So yeah,
that's time, that's money, that's because they can.
Mm-hmm.
Right? People do what they do. I always say people do what they do because they can.
Oh yeah.
Wow. And they don't, right. And also too, like they can't control you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're right. Like there's that, like, oh wait.
I signed off on it. I was just like, it's all right, we'll keep moving. You guys have to figure out your end. But oh my gosh, I don't know if you've seen this article. It's about the Latin professors who plagiarized the Black acting methods.
I should have. Oh my God. I cannot believe I didn't bring that up. You listen, you can't bring everything up because I'm like stressing. I'm like sweating. I'm like, I see all the little circles. I'm like, oh my God. They plagiarized, like they didn't even, and you didn't have, they didn't have to. I have my little shout out in the Black. I love the Black. I teach from Black acting methods. Mm-hmm. The Hip Hop Theater Initiative is cited in the Black acting methods. Yeah. Like in that, like there's no reason for it. Mm-hmm. Right? There was absolutely no reason for it.
Strange. And like we have these discussions, and Spencer actually was on my board, Spencer Hinton, and we chatted. We had discussions with Maplewood Township and the community about, just like giving credit where credit is due and not taking away from what is already there and not re-editing the narrative. And I just found it so interesting when I saw this article and it blew up all over. I just was like, this is something that we need to talk about. And I think colorism plays a role in that.
Thank you. Right. Absolutely. Which is like really, it's a hard conversation to have.
Yeah.
It's an important conversation. So whenever I enter this work too, it's not, I don't use the term BIPOC.
Yeah, I don't like it.
I don't like it. I have to go into class tomorrow and I'm going to say, you know what? From yesterday, don't use that term. Mm-hmm. It completely erases the nuance and the divergent experiences. And when I work with students of Black students, mm-hmm. and students of color, like it's important with those students of color to talk about, well, how does anti-Blackness play out in your community?
Yeah.
And have that conversation, and anti-Blackness as the gateway into assimilating whiteness and white privilege. And also, what is the legacy of colonization in your culture as a way to get into this? Absolutely.
Can I tell you, I really wish I knew you when we did Bubbly Black Girl and Scottsboro Boys. Like, yeah, we're gonna
Now.
hit you up once you email me.
Yo,
But
I'm gonna email you right now, just so you have my email, and then we can politic.
we want to do some kind of audience engagement after our shows, even though it's pre-recorded. But we want people to get a chance to listen in and like gain more information. So I'll definitely reach out to you and have the board of directors like.
Yeah, absolutely. I love experiential learning. Like this is the thing that we're gonna do now, and let's all look at this. Let's get up, and that's my jam. So I'm so glad to know you. I honor you, your work and your effort. I understand a very little bit of everything that it takes to do the wonderful work that you're doing. So I'm so glad that we were able to meet, and let's build and let's get up.
Likewise.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.